Yeah, Bitcoin is economic sovereignty, financial freedom. It might be life, right? If you were Jewish and you lived in the 1930s in Germany, it's a different life and death. You can't take your buildings with you. You can't take your land with you. They won't let you smuggle the gold through the airport. You can't take your cash with you. Diamonds were the closest idea, but diamonds aren't scarce. You can produce a lot of diamonds. In the absence of a cartel, the diamond value collapses. So humanity for thousands of years has looked for a way to store their economic energy or their wealth and to own it and not have someone seize it from them, whether it's a criminal or whether it's a hostile regime or, whether it's the majority abusing the minority. If you study the history of the world, there's 1,000 stories, and 1,000 is an understatement, thousands and thousands of stories where someone takes over a country and then somebody else is in the minority, so they just pass a law taking all their property. Whether it's, happened to the Jews 1,000 times, it happened to the Christians under the Muslims, happens to the Muslims under the Christians, happens, to the Puritans under the Anglicans, happens to the Protestants under the Catholics, happens to the, to the Quakers, underneath the Puritans. It's amazing the creativity with which human beings have a way of deciding that someone else is other, and just taking their stuff. And eventually, if you're lucky enough to be able to flee with your life, then you've got your life. But if you can flee with your property, then you can start again. And so Bitcoin's the first time we solved that problem. We never really created perfected money. It's basically pharmaceutical grade gold engineered or synthetic money that has infinite economic density. Not only can you carry all that you have, right, either in your head or on a hardware wallet, but you could also zap all that you have to your wife in another country or to your children if you needed to. And so it does represent, a new degree of freedom and sovereignty for the human race. And of course, that's desirable to everybody on the planet. In fact, it's not just desirable to all 8 billion people on the planet. Every company wants that. I mean, it's, companies get abused by countries just like people get abused, right? So at the end of the day, it solves a problem every human faces. It solves a problem every company faces. It also holds out some new ideas like most of the modern financial system is all about monetizing assets where people are forced to invest in stocks they don't want to invest in because the alternative is to have their money taken from them by inflation. So why does an 80-year-old retiree have to juggle stocks in order to avoid losing their life savings, right? And so hence you have the creation of ETFs and you have the creation of the S&P index and you have the overvaluation of stocks. If a company ought to be worth 10 times cash flow, it's worth 20 times cash flow because there's a monetary premium assigned to it. You see a monetization of real estate in places like Canada or even the US where the house costs twice as much as it ought to cost because it's valued as an asset to store your wealth rather than as a property to live in. So in the absence of a decent financial asset to store your wealth, people will use Ferraris and Rolexes and Airbnb second apartments, and they'll buy random things they don't need, or they'll buy companies they don't need, and you'll end up with like the meme stock craze and all sorts of financial speculations. But ultimately, these are people that are faced with the choice of, I'm either going to lose everything because of inflation, or I'm going to buy something that I don't need now, but I'll speculate that in the future someone else will buy it from me. And hyperinflation, when the currency collapses, you'll buy crates of soap, you'll buy crates of toilet paper, right? You'll buy bins of charcoal, or you'll buy anything, lumber, because it's better to have the lumber than to have a bunch of paper worth nothing into your. And so that, of course, results in a distortion of the financial markets, and it also results in a seizure of the actual manufacturing markets, right? Goods and services get out of kilter, and you end up with shortages, and and scarcity, and the economy just doesn't work, and eventually you're kind of ripped back to some kind of barter, right? Where the economic engine is just cut in half. And we see that in different places today. And of course, once the currency collapses, right, that's kind of the end of the society, right? That happened in Rome. When the currency collapses, then everybody kind of moves back on their own farm and they produce everything they eat, which is kind of a nice idea, except for the fact that if everybody has to produce everything they own and eat, the carrying capacity of the society is cut by a factor of 20, right? You need specialization. And so that's the challenge we face. And Bitcoin is the first digital monetary network, and it offers people the ability to do something rational. And I guess I'll make one more point, which is most corporations, they basically don't accumulate capital. They give all their capital back to their shareholders, or they go into debt as fast as they can. And the reason that you would go into debt as a company is because positive working capital is dilutive to your shareholders. You want negative working capital. So if you're a rational corporation, you're better off to borrow $1 billion and pay interest on it than you are to keep $1 billion in cash flow and get paid the interest on it. And that's because the interest you get paid on your cash is less than the monetary inflation rate. So what you see is this LBO craze, and you see most corporations in the world, they dividend out all of their earnings, they buy back their stock, and then they take on debt or they do acquisitions. All of these things are long-term, making the company weaker. But they're doing it because over the near term, those look accretive to the shareholders. And they're accretive because the sovereign debt is yielding less than the monetary inflation rate after tax. And Bitcoin represents a cure to that. It's now possible for a company just to accumulate Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So if you generate billions in cash flow, instead of giving it away to your shareholders and paying a dividend tax on it, you just buy Bitcoin with it, and the Bitcoin is appreciating at double or triple the rate of the monetary inflation. So Bitcoin is accretive. You can actually just keep your capital and generate shareholder returns on the Bitcoin, and you will get a progressively more powerful endowment. You'll be better endowed each year. So corporations, instead of having a short life expectancy and crashing because they're running on negative working capital, will actually get stronger, which would be good for jobs, right? They wouldn't, every time a company goes bankrupt, it doesn't help the workforce, right? Right? You want the companies to not go bankrupt. So it'd be better for jobs, better for consumer options. It would create better products, better services. It would be more stable for the community. Right. And that's what Bitcoin offers.